All right, guys, before we go into the Big Ten interview, we kind of need to provide a bit of a disclaimer and somewhat of an apology because we were absolutely bamboozled going into this preview. We were not made aware that Milton Wright has been academically suspended for the 2022 college football season. And as you watch along this preview, I speak really highly of him. He's in my breakout players for the season. But quite frankly, he's not going to be there for Purdue. I thought Purdue was going to be one of the most explosive offenses in the conference. I still think they are. But me and Andrew were talking a little bit before this disclaimer. We're still very high on their receiving core. We still really like guys like Jackson Anthrope. He's big on Payne Durham. And shout out Brock Thompson. He was the leading receiver for Purdue in that Music City Bowl against Tennessee, where he had 217 yards. So I don't think Purdue's out of this water yet. I had Purdue finishing second in the Big Ten West, but do I really think that they take that step back without Milton? Probably not, because I'm a huge fan of their entire receiving core. Andrew, what do you got to say about this?
Yeah, first off, shout out to every massive media outlet for not talking about this. This is pretty big news. I understand it's Purdue, not Alabama, but that's their number one wide receiver going into the year, looked at as one of the most explosive offenses in the Big Ten. And no one talked about it outside of Purdue media. So shout out to them. But yeah, it kind of sucks for Purdue, but I'm still a massive fan of Payne Durham. For some people that watched the Music City Bowl, he had that amazing play, cross over the middle. And my gosh, he just made three guys miss. Not even miss. They just couldn't tackle him. No one had a chance. Payne Durham, I love him as a tight end. I don't think Purdue's going to take much of a step back without Milton, but it is still a pretty decent loss.
It's a loss. Jackson Anthrope, he was third on the team last year in receiving yards. I think he comes back. I think he's going to finish at worst second on team. You like, Payne Durham a lot. I'm pretty big on Brock Thompson. I want to see how he can rebuild off that Music City Bowl performance. So, you know what? I don't have my mind changed much on Purdue. I still think they're a really talented team. And as far as I'm concerned, for my breakout players on Purdue or for the season, just replaced Milton Wright with Brock Thompson. I really think he's that good of a player.
It also helps when you have the best quarterback in the division by a good margin, I'd say.
Yep, definitely. So, guys, as we finish this apology up, once again, we're sorry. We blame BTN Media. I blame Josh Pate for not reporting this because it feels like he's on everything. Well, I like Josh Pate. I can't
Pate's
blame Josh Pate.
amazing.
Yeah, he is. All right, I blame Fox. I blame CBS. I blame ESPN for not reporting this. Shout out the beat writers in West Lafayette, Indiana, for actually reporting this. Not before we knew about it, but well, they kind of did. But guys, enjoy the show. It's still a killer preview, and we really think you'll enjoy it. All right, guys, welcome to this episode of the Transfer Portal. This is podcast, this is YouTube, this is everything we got. Previews full underway. Yesterday we released the ACC. This is Big Ten now. We got two Big Ten people here. We got myself repping Wisconsin, and we got Andrew here with the Gopher-Alls. We got Andrew versus Andrew borderline. This is Battle of Mississippi River going on right now. So let's go ahead. Let's just get right into this. Andrew, man, how you doing?
Doing good. Actually, as you say, Mississippi River, I can actually see the Mississippi River right now. So it is quite the border battle we got going on, and we know who has that trophy right now.
Yeah, who had that trophy the most over the last 20 years?
Who has the trophy right now?
Who has the trophy ever since you were born?
Who has the trophy right now?
As we'll see by the end of this, we'll see how confident you are if that trophy will still be there in December. Anyways, let's go right into this. So Big Ten, I think we speak about this conference a lot. This is obviously the conference that you and I, this is literally in our blood. You know, we're both Midwest guys. We will, as much as we may hate our conference, we still have to rep it no matter we like it or not, especially our division. But before we go into that aspect, we got to talk about some of the storylines. You know, there's really a lot. I think, you know, USC, UCLA coming along. This is obviously not going to be in effect for 2024, so we'll have to wait 2 years until that preview comes out. But let's kind of like just give our general gist. Do you think any of these teams, you know, are any of these teams, are they thinking ahead to 2024 already? Do you feel like some of these smaller schools that don't have the opportunity to make it to Indianapolis come December, do you think they're thinking like, oh shit, we only got this limited amount of time left until, those guys come in?
Yeah, I'd say Indiana's one. As we talk about getting to Indianapolis, they're a short drive from there in Bloomington. But
They're getting
Indiana,
tickets. Is Tom Allen buying them tickets or something to the game? Because they can do that in 2024 too.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure the game will be fun then, whether it's Maryland, Iowa. Oh, gosh, I don't even want to think about that. I just think Indiana's in an awful spot right now. I'm not a fan of Tom Allen. We can talk about 2020 all we want, how that was a fun year. Michael Penix stretching for the goal line against Penn State. Unfortunately, that's now in the past, and Indiana just doesn't have too much talent on their team. And I think they're looking at 2024 and like, yeah, we can't win, but at least we're going to get a large paycheck from the conference.
They're gonna get a large paycheck, but like, let's think about like these teams, like, how are our schools feeling? Do we feel any different once USC comes in there? How's conference going to be realigned? I think at this point, if you're one of those schools that doesn't really make it to the Big Ten title game, but you still feel like you are in a strong spot in terms of like roster wise, you gotta start feeling like they have like some sort of like assertiveness to their mind before that time comes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there aren't too many examples better than my school because once USC gets here, I will be completely fine if we don't win the Big Ten Conference. I just want to win the trophy games. So, I mean, of course, I'd love to win it. I just don't think it's that realistic of a goal when we get a team like USC if they can continue improving under Lincoln Riley. But yeah, it's just I also think that once we get to that point, we're going to see a different system. Like we're obviously not going to have divisions in 2024. That's
right. We're probably going to get the pods.
I would say we get 14 pods. And whether you consider it a pod or whether you think it's just this is who you're playing every year, and maybe they go to a 14
Are we getting that
playoff
whole thing where like we get 3 teams that we get every single season, and then
I would say so.
And let's play a little bit right here. Let's say we get the 14 pods, 16 teams. How do we not know that we're going to get into a situation where the best team from each pod plays in a semifinal to the Big Ten title game? I actually would love that.
Oh, I would love that for sure. My biggest question is who the heck is getting stuck with USC and UCLA? And by stuck, I mean, who's going to make the West Coast trip?
Let's say
I would say Nebraska.
I would say Nebraska, but then but then I was thinking like, okay, so Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, they would all obviously be in the same pod. That's without giving. Who's that 14?
It would have to be Illinois or Purdue. Probably Illinois. They would probably want to stick Purdue with Indiana.
Well, sorry, Illinois might as well just give up football up to that point. But let's focus on another storyline. This is do or die season for Scott Frost. This is not even comparable. Kenzie, let's just be glad she wasn't here because last time me and her had this conversation, it got ugly. It got to a point where once you saw the clip yourself, you had to defend Wisconsin for like 5 minutes and you wanted to cut yourself in your veins on your elbows from that. But let's just go in a little bit on Scott Frost here. We obviously know the whole thing of, every game last season was within 9 points. At the end of the day, it don't matter if you were 9 points, you lost, and, I would like to give Nebraska some props for keeping it close against Oklahoma, keeping it really close against Michigan. Came so close to betting that Nebraska money line. Thank God I didn't. Greatest pay save of my life. But is this finally, is this Scott's, is this his die or is this his due season for him?
We'll talk a lot about Nebraska soon, but I'll just give a little teaser. I don't see how much can change this year. Did they get a new quarterback? Yes. Did they get a lot of talent from the transfer portal? Yes. Do they have a new coaching staff? Yes. At the end of the day, still the same guy riding the ship. I just don't see how much you can change a program and expect a full 180. Like, we can talk all day about Casey Thompson against Oklahoma. That first half was great. Second half and a lot of the rest of the season was not great.
Benched.
No, I'm not. Yeah, he did get benched. There were times where Hudson Card went back in the game. Now, I'm not saying he's not an improvement over Adrian Martinez because as someone who's unfortunately had to watch that guy live, dude sucks. He could literally be on a little boat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, chuck a ball, and he would find a way to miss water. That's how bad he is. But I'm also looking at their schedule, and it's like they play some tough teams. So I'm a little concerned. I feel like people are kind of jumping to too many conclusions. Oh, they had so many one possession losses. Well, you can also cut that down even more because we could say they had 9 losses. You could say they had 8 one possession losses. Let's cut down a little bit more. They had a lot of stupid decisions. For one, they had Adrian Martinez cut inside on a read option where he could have had a first down. Instead, he gets the ball stripped. Michigan wins the game. Then you have the game against Iowa, which I will forever hate Scott Frost for because he cost my team a trip to Indianapolis because they had like what, a 21-point lead or something in the second quarter. It was freaking insane. So I don't know how much you can change the rest of your team to have a Band-Aid over and obviously, a head coach that really can't do too much with this program.
Now let's focus on something else. Obviously, we'll go more into it, but if they were to at least achieve a 6-6, and I'm kind of looking at their schedule as we speak, is that considered a dead or is that considered a live season? I feel like over these last couple of years, you got to label it as alive, to be honest with you. It's something that they haven't gotten. It would be a mark that they wouldn't have gotten in years.
Yeah. I think 6-6 is the area where he won't get fired, but I don't think we'll be like, oh my gosh, wow, congratulations, Scott Frost, because at the end of the day, you're still more talented than at least 6 of these teams. I mean, their non-conference is North Dakota, Georgia Southern, and then obviously Oklahoma, but those are 2 of the freest wins of all time. If they lose either of those games, Scott Frost shouldn't be back on the plane. And I understand those are home games. He shouldn't be on the plane back. But I'd say 6-6, you should. If you don't get 6-6 or 7-5, that's where I'm kind of drawing a line. If they don't make a bowl game, like I think there's a certain point in the year. I don't think they wait for the end of the year. I think they'll be like, if you lose to say, and I'm looking down at their schedule, if you lose to Purdue, you're gone. I don't think you can lose to Purdue and be like, okay, yeah, we're still going in a good program. Because we'll talk about Nebraska a little more later. That November is tough. That November is killer for them.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. They honestly, if they can just survive October, they'll be fine. But I look at this and I'm kind of just like, a 7-5 would almost seem like a dream scenario for them based on how tough the November stretch is for them. So, I mean, what other headlines do you think you have on your mind in terms of like what we should anticipate on the season?
I think we need to look at some of the teams in the East mainly that are going to try and replicate the success they had last year. Obviously, Michigan finally got over that hump. Jim Harbaugh finally got his win against the third baseman, Ryan Day. Michigan State made a New Year's Six Bowl off the back of Kenneth Walker, who should have been in New York. A little bit of a different discussion. And then you even have a team like Iowa, who had a phenomenal season. I mean, obviously, Kirk Ferentz is the definition of consistency, but they had a very good year. I mean, what they go, like 10-2 with the losses to Purdue and somebody else?
They went 9-3, I think.
They really?
Because they lost to us.
They lost to y'all. They didn't lose to us, that's for sure. Checking their schedule. 7-2 in the conference. They probably went 3-0, and yeah, it was 10-2 because they lost the Big Ten title game and they lost to Kentucky.
Yeah, but let's be honest, that's like the most unimpressive 10-2 team I think I've ever seen in my life.
Like people calling Nebraska the best 3-9 team, that's the worst 10-2 team I've ever seen. I mean, if we're going off of even more hypotheticals, if Sean Clifford stays in that Penn State Iowa game, I would let them win that game.
I mean, listen, I remember I was betting some money. I put them on a parlay to beat Purdue, and that day, I was in Austin, San Antonio that day, going to UTSA in Texas. But I remember going into that Wisconsin game the next week. I was just like, for some reason, that Purdue game just sets off like a boulder effect. It was just an avalanche effect. That's all it was. Because after you lost to Purdue, you get killed at Wisconsin. You get a hardly impressive win against Northwestern that went 2-10 last season, 3-9. I think they went 3-9. Yeah, they beat y'all in the Floyd of Rosedale, but that was a really close game though.
Yeah.
And then I would hope you could beat Illinois and Nebraska. And even then, like you said, Nebraska blew that lead against Iowa. But then you get absolutely smacked against Michigan, the Big Ten title game, and then you absolutely embarrass yourself. Some of the most unimpressive offensive football I've ever seen against that Kentucky team. That was about as unimpressive as the Rose Bowl bid in like 2016 or whatever that year was. But I think something that we kind of need to talk about is I think something that we really need to give a lot of props to going into this season is the amount of talented running backs in this conference. There's a lot, and I've already got a list right here. From Ohio State, we got Travion Henderson, who's probably a top two, just right behind Bijan in terms of best running back in the country, along with Maya Williams, who's probably got the absolute among the best backup running backs in the country in that spot. We got Braylon Allen, breakout star last season. Chez Mellusi, who got injured after the third week, I believe it was last season. He comes back, and I'd like to see how Paul Chris is going to divide the snaps between those guys, because last season against Penn State, everybody was expecting Jalen Berger to be the star running back for Wisconsin. He's out after only a month. He's at Michigan State now. We're going to get there in a second here. Malusi's back. I want to know like how involved are they going to get Malusi into the passing game? I think Braylon's going to be the downhill guy. Malusi will probably be in shotgun next to Graham in the backfield. Mo Ibrahim, how is he going to be when he comes back from that ACL? I know I tease you a lot about, he's essentially on a pogo stick right now, but if he's healthy, I mean, he could be a very good, and I know Minnesota's got a very good stable of running backs, very impressive. Blake Corum is still at Michigan. With Hassan Haskins back in the NFL, Blake Corum, he'll take that lead spot from Michigan. And then I think Michigan State, while these two guys are not going to be able to replicate what Kenneth Walker did last season, which was almost borderline godly numbers, Jalen Berger and Jarek Broussard, like for those that don't know who Jarek Broussard is, he was a Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year only 2 years ago. This dude is good, okay? He's very good. I think he's very underrated. He was one of the only good things about Colorado that year. I think we need to give a lot of props. If you're one, pardon for the fire trucks, I live right next to a fire station, but in terms of these guys, I think that this is a very good stable running backs. And I think once those all Big Ten teams come out, you're going to start looking at like first team compared to third team guys, and you're going to be like, how do you even separate some of these names?
Yeah, and those are just the top end names. I mean, I feel like you could get to that next echelon down, and it's not too far. One guy I'll talk about in a second, Chase Brown from Illinois. I think he's vastly underrated. And you could even go to another level. Northwestern has Evan Hull. There's just so many great running backs in this conference.
Also, I think another headline that we got to focus on, something that was weird is the team that lost this game last season ended up going to the playoff. It's going to be which Michigan school is going to be top in the state. These are going to, I think Michigan, they're going to be very similar as they were last season. I don't think they're going to be as dominant as they were last season, but in terms of, their frame, the foundation that they are running the ball, allow Cade McNamara to ease himself into games. I think that's how Michigan can find success again this season. But this Michigan State team, while I don't think their duo of running backs is going to do anywhere near the damage that Kenneth Walker is, I think it's still going to be among a top five, maybe, I'll say it, probably a top five duo going into this season. But they just need to fix that defense. I mean, for the love of God. I mean, the run defense was really good, but that pass defense was literal bottom. It was below MAC. It was below Sunbelt. It was below every AAC school. It was the worst pass defense in the country. The sad part was it was the worst before it even faced Ohio State. And then after CJ Stroud and Jackson Smith and Jigba decided to drop it on their faces, it got even worse. I think they were the worst pass defense by like 30 yards.
Yeah, I think all secondaries coaches turned on a Michigan State game and they were just crying because of how awful that defense was. And I think another thing, what did they really do to make it better this year? Like they didn't really go after a bigger name transfer. I don't know if they got any more than like one or two transfers for the secondary. Are we just hoping that they develop? I don't know if there's too much concern from them about that secondary. Oh, they'll grow into those roles. These are like juniors and seniors this year. Are we really expecting them to go from the worst pass defense in the country to okay enough? I'm a little worried about.
It worked well for Ole Miss last season. I mean, Ole Miss, remember, they had the absolute worst defense in the SEC back in 2020. 2021, they were nowhere near the best, but hey, they were at least middle of the pack. I think if you're Michigan State, if you're at least like 33rd percentile, I mean, I think you might as well just take it. I mean, I still think Payne Thorne can still win some games for them. He's obviously not going to be a lead quarterback, but I do think it's important for them to at least find a way, like find some level playing field. What can you do to, allow Jalen and Jarek to just get as much time of possession as you can, because if you're just letting your defense out there most of the time, it's just going to get real ugly, real bad. And unfortunately, as much as I do like the duo that Michigan State has, it's not going to get you. It's not going to bring you back into games.
Yeah, I mean, last year Kenneth Walker won them games. If we roll back to the Michigan game, Michigan State's not even close in that game if Kenneth Walker's not playing. Not even close.
All right, cool. So I think we finished up the storylines. We were talking a little bit about, the new coming quarterbacks. We've already said one. We don't know how good he's going to be. I think Casey is in a better position than what he was at Texas. I will say that. I feel like at least here in the Big Ten, he can essentially play at his own pace. Whereas it feels like back at Texas, he was in a shootout every single week. At least here, he can play a more patient game.
I would disagree, because he does have the more patient game. He also has significantly less talent around him and a significantly worse offensive play caller. Now, we'll see what Mark Whipple does at Nebraska, but Steve Sarkisian is one of the best offensive minds in the country, and he no longer has the best running back in the country and one of the best wide receivers in the country in Xavier Worthy. So that's what kind of concerns me. What happens when you take away all the outside talent and you just put Casey Thompson on an island?
Well, I think one thing that benefits Casey Thompson is while we know that he's not the best thrower of the ball, at least we know that he can still run it. And as much as Steve Sarkisian, he does want a pocket passer. Whereas with Adrian Martinez, I mean, he essentially had to run everywhere. It doesn't mean he was running to the right places. I think at least Casey is a bigger body. He can still run over a couple guys in the secondary. I think he can find some open spaces. This is where I think it gets to his benefits. I think he will still solidify his starting position, but I am not expecting the best out of him either.
I don't think he's going to be bad. He's definitely going to be an upgrade for Martinez, but you also look at who's in his division. He's got 3 probably top 20 defenses that he'll have to play, I believe, later in the year as well, because Iowa's going to be their last game. Wisconsin's going to be one of their last games, and Minnesota's one of their last games. So like we talked about earlier, that November, if they don't have a amazing record going into November and Casey Thompson isn't, as advertised, man, they're going to have a real showing in November. And I don't think it's going to be a good one.
Is it even worth our time to talk about Tommy DeVito going from Syracuse to Illinois? No.
I mean, he had the talent of 2019 when Syracuse won a good amount of games, but it's Illinois. They're going to run.
I mean, once we get to our predictions here, you'll just see how much I could care less about Illinois. Breakout players, you start us off.
All right, so I've got 2. I'll start off in the Big Ten West, where I kind of mentioned his name earlier, Chase Brown. Brett Bielema last year kind of had a little rant about his offensive linemen. I think that they're going to be better this year. I think Chase Brown is going to get more attention at the national scale and especially the conference scale, because when you think about the Big Ten running backs last year, it was Travion, it was Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum, it was Kenneth Walker, it was Braylon Allen. I think Chase Brown's not going to put his name in that category, but I think he's going to get more recognition, and teams are going to be like, oh, shoot, we're playing Illinois. We got to worry about Brett Bielema, and we got to worry about Chase Brown. He is a great running back. I thought he had a very good game. I believe it was against Ohio last year. Dude had like 200 plus yards. Every run was just explosive. Love Chase Brown at Illinois.
I'm going to open up. I'm going to stay in Big Ten West. I'm going to go with Milton Wright. I've spoken about him a few times over the last couple of weeks. Milton Wright for Purdue, the wide receiver. I think Purdue knows how to produce wide receivers. I mean, it goes back to Rondale Moore, could go back to David Bell last season. They just produced some really good players. I think Milton Wright's going to be next in line for that. If I were to tell you or ask you who led Purdue in receiving touchdowns last season, I think you would be a little surprised to find out it was not their first team All-American wide receiver. It was Milton Wright. Last season, he had 732 yards. Compare that to his 7 touchdowns, his 7 receiving touchdowns, 2021. He's averaging more than 1 every other game. Also, he had 213 yards versus Northwestern in that Wrigley Field game. You may as well have called it right field. He was that good in that game. And as he takes the number 1 option for Aiden O'Connell going into this season, I think he's going to be arguably he's not going to put up Jackson Smith and Jigba because that's just going to be impossible. But I think he's going to be right next to him in that first team All Big Ten.
Yeah, and he also has the benefit of having the best quarterback in the division by a good margin, I would say.
Yes.
Aiden O'Connell is definitely good. He's definitely the best in the West. That's like saying you're the.
He needs to make smart decisions, though. I mean, we saw that in the Tennessee Music
Yeah.
City Bowl.
There were some weird decisions, but that's also what made that Music City Bowl amazing. That was my
Yes.
favorite bowl game. All right, next up, I'm going to go over to the Big Ten East, and I'm going to talk about Jacob Copeland, wide receiver from Maryland, Florida transfer. I just think he's in the best spot possible. I mean, we look at all the teams in even the country. I don't see many teams that are going to have as talented of a wide receiver room than Maryland. They've got Jacob Copeland, they've got Dante Demas, and they've got Rakim Jarrett. Those are three very talented wide receivers, and hopefully Talia Tagovailoa can be a little bit more consistent this year because I do think he is a good player. If he can, that's a heck of a trio that's going to cause a lot of problems for defenses, especially secondaries that may not be that good.
I think whenever a person, I'm gonna stay in Big Ten West again. I'm gonna go with somebody from my team. Actually, when you think of Wisconsin, you think of defensive players. You think of guys like T.J. Watt. You think of guys like Leo Chanel, guys that go after quarterbacks. Joe Schobert's another guy. J.J. Watt, obviously. But now that we got Leo Chanel and Jack Sanborn going off to the NFL now, it's time for the next guy to step up. I think that's going to be Nick Herbig. He's a junior from Hawaii. He actually led the team in sacks last season with 9, and he still had 14.5 tackles for losses. Now, when you think about those are obviously high numbers. How much more breakout could it possibly be? You got to understand, he was never in Wisconsin spotlight last season. He was always in Jack Sanborn's shadow. He was always in Leo Chanel's shadow. I think he's going to hit that double digits. I think he's going to get at least 10. He's going to build on from that 9. I think he has potential to get at least 16 tackles for losses. He is that aggressive. He's that fast on the line. I think that's his biggest, among the most underrated attributes about him is how good he's off, how fast he is off the ball. And he had 61 tackles last season. That's the most among all of Wisconsin's returning starters. I think Nick Herbig, I think he's going to get himself in that same conversation as Chanel, TJ, JJ, Joe Schobert. I think he's that good of a player.
Yeah, pains me to say I really like watching Herbig. He's really freaking good. And, Wisconsin is known for having those great linebackers and edge rushers. So, yeah, going to be tough, but definitely a great pick to break out.
All right, top in-conference games. I know we're supposed to go with 3, but truthfully, I wrote down 6.
Okay, that's cool.
I just feel like we're just gonna have a lot of the same. So
yeah,
I'm gonna go ahead and just let you start off on this one.
All right, I'm going to start off. I feel like I've been kind of hinting at this when I talked about Jacob Copeland. Michigan State at Maryland. Michigan State has a bit of a tough stretch. We know their secondary is not good. I don't see how much they can really improve. And Maryland's going to have one of the top passing offenses. I think that's a game where, last year at Michigan State, they were really good, but Maryland is a team you can't ignore. They're going to have 3 very talented receivers to torch that secondary. If Michigan State cannot find a consistent offense with either Peyton Thorne or the running back tandem that you talked about, especially Jarek Broussard, I think that's a game Maryland can win.
This is what pisses me off about Maryland, to be honest with you. Like, whenever you look at a Maryland team, you look at the offense, you're always just like, this team on almost any given Saturday could put up 30 points per game if they wanted to. But sometimes they just don't. That's a big issue that I have. Also, the defense never keeps up with the offense. That's a big issue that they have. Maryland's one of those teams where it's like you kind of looked at it and you kind of look at Maryland, you're kind of just like, why can they not be better? Is it just the brand that Maryland has that a lot of these other Big Ten teams do not have? Like, I know we laughed at Maryland when they first joined the Big Ten, but like, truthfully, I look at Maryland, I'm just like, y'all should honestly be better.
Oh, 100%. And especially with the state they're in the area, so many talented prospects and recruits come out of the DMV.
I think the fact that it's a university that's associated with killing a student might have something to do with it, but that's a very touchy subject that we're not going to go into right now. I think I'm going to go with among the Big Ten's first games of the season. Week 1, I spoke about this. I think it was the last time that you and I were on a pod together. Penn State at Purdue. I think Purdue is on a mission this season. I think Milton Wright and Aiden O'Connell, I think they got chance to be the second best wide receiver quarterback tandem in the Big Ten this season. Penn State, I am very, very low on this season. It feels like going into last season, I was told that Noah Cain was going to be the breakout running back in the conference. He indeed was not. He had some injury issues that extremely limited him. But in terms of Purdue and Penn State had the most. I think they had the most draftees in the NFL draft this last season, just a couple months ago. They were among the top.
It was among the top. Top was Georgia.
Yeah, they had among the top. I think they lost like 17 players. I think it was.
I can double check that right now. I don't know about total players, but for starters, as I flip through this magazine, because preview magazines are always the best, they returned 11 total starters from last year.
That's low.
Yeah, 7 on offense, 4 on defense.
And Penn State's is a team that wants to brand on his defense. Truthfully, I don't really see it. I think Milton. I think he could have his welcome out party against Penn State. It's at Purdue. I am not looking forward to Penn State this season. I am not a fan of Sean Clifford. I'm not a fan of James Franklin. This seems to be a game for Purdue where I think they can really break out. Penn State, I'm just not a fan of. And I think this is just going to be one of those first games of the season where we're kind of just like, what the hell just happened? This is probably going to give us our first jaw drop in the conference this season.
Yeah, I'm going to need text updates from everybody on this game because I'm not going to be able to watch it. But I completely agree with you. This is a Thursday night game at Purdue. I believe this is where Fox is going to be, which, I mean, at Purdue, not where what I would expect Fox to be. But you know what? They make some weird decisions I can't change. I love Purdue. I'm also not super high on Penn State. But, man, it feels like every year there's reasons to not be high on Penn State, and they never, like, completely disappoint.
I mean, they kind of did 2 years ago.
Yeah, but I also don't.
I know it's COVID, but like what was their record last season? It was 7-5 last season, wasn't it?
7-5, yeah, because they lost in the 6-6. It looks like. Yeah, 6-6, and they beat. Did they beat Arkansas? No, Arkansas beat them. So 7-5.
Yeah, I know they lost to Arkansas. So yeah,
7-5.
And with them returning half the stars from last season, if it was even that, yeah, I'm not high on Penn State at all going into the season. I am, who was their white? Their whiteout game is against y'all
this year. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I don't know why they did that. I just think they don't have.
It wasn't them. It was Fox.
Fox made hold on. Fox tells Penn State what their whiteout game is.
So Fox has this veto card that they can use on any team in the country. And they said, we're going to veto you having whiteout against Ohio State because we want you as Big Noon Kickoff. So Big Noon Kickoff is now going to be Penn State, Ohio State. And that game has to be at 11 because it has to kick off to Gus Johnson. So now they had to make it their next best home opponent. I believe that's us because they play at Michigan this year.
Jackasses.
Yeah, this is why we don't like networks. And this is going to be the network running the Big Ten.
Okay, let's know. What was your next big conference game of the season?
All right. I'm going to throw all bias to the wind, and I'm going to go Iowa at Minnesota. Not only do I think this is a massive game for the division, this is a massive game for Minnesota in general. This is the best possible chance they've had to beat Iowa in a good amount of time. Iowa, I think, is going to be down this year. I don't think they're going to be anywhere near what they were last. Minnesota's got a good team, and the game is at home. If they cannot beat Iowa, something big has to change. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's firing Fleck, but you got to change something because Iowa, not that good. You have it at home. Minnesota returns a good amount of talent, and they're also coming off a game against Northwestern at home. So they're not coming off a road trip. Iowa, I don't think Iowa's coming off a bye. This has to be a must win for them. And they just haven't had the pig in so long.
So my next in-conference game is Wisconsin at Ohio State, week 4. I believe the date of this game is around September 23rd, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. The reason why I picked this game is part of it's bias, I will be honest with you, but this is going to be a really good test for both teams. This shows, the two of the top 5 running backs in the country between Travion and Braylon, in my honest opinion. That's the first thing that I look at. I look at what is, Wisconsin's going to have a much different secondary this season. I think their leading returning secondary player from last season, Dean Ingram, just switched to wide receiver. So now we're showing a very young secondary for Wisconsin going into this game against the likes of Marvin Harrison Jr., against the likes of CJ Stroud, Travion, and of course, Jackson Smith and Jigba. This is going to be probably the best defense that CJ Stroud has played, I think, in his entire career. While I just mentioned about Wisconsin's secondary, Wisconsin has had only one season since Jim Leonard's been defensive coordinator. Only one season has they been outside the top 5 nationally in total defense. That was in 2018, where they were like 32nd. Last season, it was first. 2 years ago, I think it was like second or third. They're just always among the top. Jim Leonard knows how to reload on the defensive side. I want to know, how can a young secondary, a younger front seven, how can they compete with the likes of the CJ, Marvin, Jackson, Travion, Mayim even? I think this has potential to be a really, really close game. Last time Wisconsin played Ohio State, it was really they've been putting up really, really close games over the last couple of years. Wisconsin's never won it, but this is a really, really good showing that I think both teams can put out. I think both teams are going to be undefeated up to this point, because I think Ohio State's going to beat Notre Dame, and I think Wisconsin's going to beat Wazoo whenever they play each other. This is going to be Wisconsin's first conference game. I think this is going to be Ohio State's also first conference game. I'm expecting College Game to be at this game 100%.
Yeah, we're talking about arguably one of the top defenses going into the country, going up against, in my opinion, the best offense in the country. So sparks will fly, and I think this is going to end up, we obviously just talked about, or you just talked about Wisconsin defense. I think this is going to come down to, is Ohio State going to improve on defense? Because if Jim Knowles can't improve that defense, which I think he can.
I was going to touch on that too, because I think Zach Harrison deciding to come back was a massive move for Ohio State's defense. If he did not come back, that front seven was going to be weaker than what it would have been without him.
Yeah.
Another thing that I forgot to mention is this is going to be the first game, I think, of the season where it's going to show what is Graham Mertz's growth going into this season. Is this finally the season, his 4th season at the program? This is going to be his 3rd as a starter. Is this finally the season where he takes that step forward? And at the shoe, among the most horrifying sights, one of the worst environments for a visiting team to visit, how does he handle that pressure?
See, and I completely agree. Wisconsin fans and everybody just has to see, is this the year? I just don't see why it would be.
3rd season. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if it's your 3rd season, at this point, if you give someone 3 years with a quarterback and you do not develop him by that 3rd season, I honestly think it says more about the coaching staff than it does the actual player itself.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm just, what in the last
I want to look. I want to see him be better. I want him to be the top 3 pocket passer that he was coming out of high school. I would kill to see that. I saw this dude throw 5 touchdowns in an All-American game in San Antonio, and I was like, this is finally our guy. I have waited so long. Since Russell Wilson's been gone. I see this guy. He wins the All-American game MVP. He shows out against Illinois in his first career start, goes 23-24, only 1 incomplete pass, and next thing I know, I have to deal with a glorified Tanner McAvoy week to week. I'm sick of it.
Glorified Tanner McAvoy is a good reference. I know you're sick of it. Me personally, and I'm not even saying this as a Minnesota fan that hates Graham Mertz or Wisconsin. I just don't see how he could just have a magic snap of the finger and all of a sudden he's very good.
We'll see. All right, your next big game of the season.
This is my 3rd and final one. So after this, you can rattle off your other ones. I'm going to go Nebraska at Purdue. If Nebraska has a schedule or a season like I think they will up to this point, they'll have 1 loss to Oklahoma, and then after this, they'll have a bye. Then they'll go into the November stretch. If Nebraska loses this game, I think that's where you fire Scott Frost. I understand you only have 2 losses, but you can't expect a team that can't beat Purdue to go up teams against like Michigan, They'll play Minnesota. They'll play Iowa. They'll play Wisconsin. They start off with Illinois. I don't think they could lose to Illinois. It's not a team you can overlook. But if you can't beat Purdue and it's at Purdue, AOC and Milton Wright, man, if you can't stop them, I think that's where Nebraska's got to be like, what day is it that Scott Frost's buyout cuts down significantly? Because I think that if this is after that, they cut him off immediately. If it's before then, they're counting the days.
It honestly feels kind of funny that we're putting Purdue as we've been hyping up Purdue a little bit up to this point, and all of a sudden now we're saying, hey, Nebraska will lose this game. This is where you cut off Frost. I think that Oklahoma game is going to be a lot more interesting. Obviously this is Big Ten. It's obviously in Big 12 transitioning to SEC, but I just don't know how good Oklahoma is going to be this season. Also, this is the first season under Brent Venables. This is a completely different Oklahoma team than we're seeing last season. They're not going to have we're going in with Dylan Gabriel. We don't know what Dylan Gabriel is going to be in a Sooner uniform. If this was a Big 12 preview, I don't think Oklahoma goes better than 9-3. Now, how does a 9-3 Oklahoma compare to a, let's say, best case scenario 7-5 Nebraska? We'll see. But I do think this is where I kind of look at the Nebraska-Oklahoma game. I'm kind of just like, okay, compare Oklahoma to last season. I think Oklahoma takes a step down. With Nebraska, we just do not know. I just don't know if this Nebraska team is better. And if they are, can they erase that 7-point deficit that was in that loss against Oklahoma? That was in Norman, by the way. We'll see how it translates.
Yeah, the thing with the Oklahoma game for me is there's just so many unknowns. I don't think Nebraska would cut them off if they lose to Oklahoma. Sure, they would be like, okay, man, this is a new Oklahoma team. They're still finding their identity. This is a game we should be at least contending in. If it's not close, like say it's like a 14-point loss, which I consider not close if it's 14 points, then I think there's a lot more questions. But if it's like a 3 or 6-point loss, I don't think they're really too upset because I do think Oklahoma's going to be fine this year. Could they go 9-3? Yes. I think 10-2 would be a bit of a stretch, but I don't think it's impossible. I think Venables is going to do a good job at OU, but of course, this is not a Big 12 breakdown. Yeah, there's just so many opportunities. If Nebraska loses more than or 2 or more games in the first 2 months, which sounds like, wow, Nebraska took a huge step up. Well, they're also playing like
Cupcake.
Rutgers. This is exactly a cupcake schedule. They play freaking North Dakota.
Not State.
Nope, not State, because they would lose to North Dakota State. I will stand on that hill. They would lose to North Dakota State. They'll beat North Dakota. And I'm 100% serious.
All right. The only reason why I wrote down 6 was just because I thought we were going to have so many of the same ones, but truthfully, you didn't have any of them in terms of my big games of the season. I think another very important game we need to go into is one that's relatively early in the conference schedule. Is one that involves your team, Purdue and Minnesota. And I know this is the second Purdue game that I've listed, and I know I sound like Keegan with the way that I'm repping Purdue right now, but this is a Purdue team that I really think. Remember Maryland? What was it, a couple seasons ago where they started off 6-0 and they got as high as like 17th in the country, and then they absolutely blew it the rest of the way. I just want to make sure that this Purdue team is not going to be something as similar. I think this is going to be a statement game for both teams because I think the winner of this game is going to see themselves top 2 come Big Ten West time at the end of the season. The loser of this game, I don't even think they make top 3.
Ooh. Okay. I actually agree with you. Because
I'm actually, and I know I just compared top 2 to like not even top 3, but I could easily pick Iowa against any of these teams, and I can make it just as sound as good also. But I think because that this game is relatively early enough in the season, I think this is one of those big games before crunch time comes along.
Yeah. And what I'll say, Minnesota has a tough 2-game stretch. They got to go to East Lansing, then come back for homecoming against Purdue. Now, Purdue is not a team that they've struggled against really at all, but this is a different Purdue team. You can never sleep on them. I personally think Minnesota is going to win that game. That's me personally. I can definitely see a world where Purdue wins it, but yeah, I completely agree. If this is a game Purdue wins, it's them in Wisconsin and Iowa, of course, but I've also
But
said
I'm not
super
high
high
on
on
Iowa,
Iowa.
to be honest, though.
Oh, I mean,
So
we'll talk about divisions later. I'm not high on
right,
Iowa.
of course. But just some other ones that I listed here. I said Wisconsin and Michigan State, week 7. Wisconsin goes back to East Lansing. Last time Wisconsin went to East Lansing, they won like 35 to like 7. It was something stupid. But that Michigan State team was terrible. That was a Wisconsin team that made it to the Cotton Bowl or the Orange Bowl. It was one of the two bowls. I think it was Cotton. Now that I think about it. This is Jalen Berger welcoming in his old squad against his new squad. We'll see how he performs against them, against a defense they used to practice against. I think that's going to be a very crucial game for both teams in terms of conference standings. I think that's a game that I think Wisconsin wants more than Michigan State wants. Wisconsin's going to want that Big Ten win. They want that extra W. If they do not beat Michigan State, that is absolutely crucial for Wisconsin. If they lose that game, I do not think they make it number 1 in the Big Ten West, even though Michigan State's not even in that same division. Just some other ones I listed. I said Michigan State at Michigan, just because, I don't think it's that important because I think Ohio State, I think they're going to absolutely dominate every team that they play, to be honest with you. But I think that is an important game in terms of who will make it to a New Year's Six bowl game. That's where I will cut that off. And then, of course, we're going to go with the absolute pinnacle of all Big Ten games, Michigan, Ohio State. I think both teams are going to be in a really good position once that goes by. It's probably going to be a battle of a Big Ten conference attendee and also who's going to have a better path to the playoff.
Yeah, that game, I could very well see that game undefeated.
Yes, absolutely. Because I don't think Michigan's going to take a step back. I don't think they're going to be as dominant. I don't think they're going to be as dominant defensively, but I do think they're still going to have a path. If they beat Michigan State, I don't know who's going to beat them, to be honest with you, before they get to Ohio State.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is with Michigan, they also have a bye coming off. So does Michigan State. Both teams are coming off byes into that game, and it's at the Big House, and we know how that game ended last year. So very, very interesting battle for Paul Bunyan.
All right, cool. So in terms of division standings, do we want to go West or East first?
I say we start East because both our teams are in the West.
All right. I'll start off with Indiana for bottom barrel. I think they're going to go behind Rutgers. I think they can put up a pretty good offense. It's their defense that always sets them back. I think Rutgers is better than Indiana. I just think this is Tom Allen's last season. I don't know if they make it better than 3-9. That's just my wholehearted, honest opinion. I'm sick of trying to live off of anything that Indiana accomplished in 2020. I'm done with it, really. Zero hopes for Indiana anymore. Above Indiana.
Do you have a record for Indiana?
I think I'll set them at like 3-9, to be honest with you.
All right. I have them at 3-9 and 1-8 in the conference. Looking at their schedule, they start with Illinois on a Friday. I believe does Illinois play a week 0 game?
I do not believe so. But
They do not.
They do not.
No, they're not. I have a few of their schedules written down. I think they lose to Illinois. They play Idaho. If they lose to Idaho, go away. They play Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky's coming off a bye, but there's no Bailey Zappi. Then they go to Cincinnati.
Western Kentucky. Here's the thing, Western Kentucky. They can, like, I know what we said about Zach Hitley going to Tech. Obviously no longer there at Western Kentucky. But WKU, I feel like they can put up an electric offense no matter who's there.
Yeah, I just, if Western Kentucky couldn't beat a bad Indiana team last year, I don't see why they would be able to do it this year without Zappi, without Stearns, without Kitley.
Lose at Cincy.
100%. I have them losing to Cincy. I have them losing to Nebraska. Nebraska's off a bye. I have them losing at home versus Michigan, losing at home versus Maryland, losing at Rutgers. Rutgers is coming off a bye.
Oh, that November is brutal.
That November is the Eastern version of Nebraska's November because they have Penn State at home. And
this is worse than Nebraska.
They could very well go 2-10. They could very well go 2-10. Then they go to Ohio State, to Michigan State, have Purdue at home. Very easily 0-4.
I would bet, if any sports book out there puts a prop that Indiana will go 0-4 in the month of November, I will jump my happy ass in my car, drive all the way to Louisiana, and place that bet. I easily would.
Yeah. Well, I mean, would you drive all the way to Louisiana for a minus 1,500?
I mean, don't tell my girlfriend, but I'll bet my car note on it.
Yeah.
It'll give me a couple $100.
You know what? Just put your entire mortgage on it. Put everything you own on it. Sell everything. It's like you'll make like 55 cents, like for betting $1,000 on it. But money's money. 55 cents. That's halfway to a pack of gum.
All right, so from bottom to top in the East, just know that I don't have any record set. This is just how I think it's going to play out, and I just think this is kind of how it's going to finish out in terms of team quality wise. Indiana from bottom, Rutgers second from bottom, Maryland, that'll put them at 5th.
Oh, we're rushing through these? I thought we were going to go team by team.
I don't know how we're supposed to do this. Well, I guess I'll rush through it, and then you kind of just roast me if you think anything is out of whack here. I think Maryland's going to finish 5th in that division. Penn State 4th, Michigan State 3rd, Michigan 2nd, and then Ohio State 1st.
All right. I will say there is one spot where we completely disagree.
Is it Maryland?
It is at two. Okay, so second to bottom for me is Rutgers. I don't think Rutgers is going to be good by any means, but they also have an easier non-conference. I think they'll go 2 non-conference, but Indiana, they also have 2 non-conference, but they also have Cincinnati. I have them at 4 and 8, 2 and 7 in the conference. I have records for a few of these. 5th, I have Michigan State.
Wow.
So I think Michigan State takes a big step back. So I'll read what I have written down for Michigan State right here. They were one of the surprise stories of 2021, but a lot of their production is gone because Kenneth Walker quite literally carried them for a lot of their games. And I'm not super trustworthy in Peyton Thorne being, the reason you can win a ton of games. So at their schedule, their 3 non-conference games are versus Western Michigan, versus Akron, at Washington. I think Washington's a closer game than people are going to give credit for. That's a losable game. I have them winning all 3, though. And I want to read this 5-game stretch for you that I think they go 0-5. Pretty big swing. Versus Minnesota, at Maryland, versus Ohio State, versus Wisconsin, bye at Michigan. I think they go 0-5. I mean, Minnesota is a team where they're going to dominate time of possession. I don't trust Michigan State's offense enough to be able to keep up with a Minnesota team that will probably have 40 minutes of time of possession, if not more. And I think Minnesota's defense is still going to be good. Loss at Maryland. I love Maryland's passing offense. Talked about it already. One of the marquee games, I think. And Michigan State's secondary, I don't think is going to get that much better. Obviously, it can't be that bad again. Otherwise, we're going to have a ton of other questions. I think they lose at Maryland off of a great passing performance from Talia Tagovailoa. They're losing to Ohio State. That's a given. I think they lose to Wisconsin. I love Wisconsin's defense too much, and Braylon Allen's going to be able to have a great game. Then they have a bye, and I just don't think there's any chance on earth they beat Michigan this year, especially at the Big House. After last year, Jim Harbaugh has a sour taste in his mouth. Michigan has more talent. I think Michigan State goes 0-5 in that stretch, and that puts them at 3-5. And then I think they win 3 of their final 4 because it's at Illinois versus Rutgers versus Indiana, and they finished the year losing at Penn State 6-6, 3-6 in the conference.
I think they go 2-3. With the wins against Minnesota and Maryland. I'm obviously not saying that to diss. I'm just saying that just because while I do think that they will take a step back, I know it is quite a bit of loss of talent. I still don't. While I obviously don't think it's going to be New Year's 6, I still think they're going to be good enough on the ground with Jarek, with Jalen. Payne still does not have to do a whole ton. I think the front 7 for Michigan State, I think it could still be very viable at times. This is still going to be a conference where they're not going to have to rely on a whole lot of passing attacks when it comes to playing West opponents. I don't know what Tanner Morgan's going to look like. I know you sure as hell don't know what Tanner Morgan's going to look like. There are times where I watch Talia Tagovailoa, and while I know that he has talent, there are just times where I look at his decision-making, and I'm just like, where the hell is he throwing it to? Kind of wish kind of looks like Tua on the Dolphins, to be honest with you. But I think Michigan State, they'll still go 2-3, but I think they'll go undefeated the rest of the way. That's just my personal opinion on what I think of Michigan State.
And we're here to have different takes, because if we agreed on anything, this podcast would suck.
It would. All right. So what was the other one that you disagreed on massively?
Maryland. I have Maryland 4th at 8-4, 5-4.
And then Penn State at 3rd, I assume.
I have them tied, but I have Penn State ahead of them because of tiebreaker for head-to-head. So
they both
Maryland,
have 4-5 conference or 5-4 conference?
5-4.
5-4.
So Maryland beats Buffalo, Charlotte, SMU. I feel like that should be a given. They lose to Michigan, beat Michigan State. I think they can edge out Purdue very closely. That would be a decent upset in my opinion, but they have them at home. I think they beat Indiana. I think they beat Northwestern. Like we talked about that year where they started like 6-0. I think that this is kind of a similar season to that, because before their bye, I have them going 7-1, which I feel like that might actually be a little too high, but I'm going to roll with it for now. Then they have their bye. Then they have 3 straight of Wisconsin, at Penn State versus Ohio State. That's an easy 0-3. And then they finish the year winning against Rutgers, 8-4, 5-4. And then Penn State, I'm not super high on them, but I think true freshman Singleton at running back, I think he can do some work. I don't think he's going to be, obviously it's not going to be Saquon, but I think that they still are going to have some incoming talent on defense, whether it's from the bench or whether it's some freshmen. I like Penn State a little bit more than you. I don't think they're great. They could easily go 7-5. I have them at 8-4, 5-4 with the head-to-head over Maryland.
I just don't have any reason why they would be better than their 7-5 last season. I didn't even think last season's team was that much better. No, I didn't think last season's team was that good, and I don't see why this would be any better, to be honest with you.
I don't think Clifford is the worst quarterback. He's obviously not that good, but losing
would you like for me to call Dave and get his thoughts on it? I mean, I really will.
I feel like I know what he'd say. Losing Jahan Dotson hurts on the outside, but they still have Parker Washington. They bring in Mitchell Tinsley from Western Kentucky, who was a big part of that offense last year. I don't think they're going to be bad. So I have 8-4 for them. Next up, second, Michigan. I have them going 11-1. And their loss is pretty obvious because I have Ohio State going 13-0.
All right. So since I started the East, you want to start West?
I'll start West. I think we have the same team in last place, and that's Illinois.
Yeah. But here's the thing, though. Here's what I will say. This is I don't think it's going to be that bad of an Illinois team. I just think Brett Bielema is just going to be dealt a really young team. This is still a really developing team. If Illinois goes poorly this season, like if they go year 4-8, 3-9, like I think we both think that they're going to be, take it with a grain of salt, because Brett has a really, really big project to fix over there in Champaign.
Yeah, they're not going to be popping much champagne in Champaign this year. They start off with Wyoming. I think that's a win. Then they have at Indiana. They have a very tough non-conference opponent in Virginia this year. They have them at home. I just still don't think they beat Virginia. Then they have their bye, pretty early bye. Then they have Chattanooga at home. If they lose to Chattanooga, we've got problems. Then they've got a pretty tough 3-game stretch. They have at Wisconsin versus Iowa versus Minnesota. That's 3 of the top teams in the West.
I don't think at Nebraska is a given either.
Oh, at Nebraska, and actually I have a record for them. I think they can actually win that game because Nebraska may be looking ahead to that awful 4-game stretch, which you could consider this a 5-game stretch if you think Illinois is tough. But coming off a bye, going to Nebraska, then you've got game 9 versus Michigan State, that's an L. Versus Purdue, that's an L. At Michigan, that's an L. And I think they lose to Northwestern and finish 4-8, 2-7.
Where you have Northwestern, I'm very curious about, only because we never know with Northwestern.
Pat Fitzgerald is such an unknown. Obviously, he's a very good coach, but
he's very good. He does more with geniuses than what any of us would know what to do with.
Yeah, I feel like I might be a tad high on Northwestern.
Okay.
So do you want me to just run through the entire conference?
Go for it.
All right. I have Northwestern next at 5-7 and 2-7. I just think Evan Hull's a good running back. I don't think they're going to be anywhere near as bad as they were last year. Losing Brandon Joseph hurts on the back end. But there's so many of those like fringe winnable games where I'm going to favor coaching. And Fitzgerald as a coach, I'm very rarely going to go against in this conference unless it's the Ryan Days of Jim Harbaugh's. So I think Northwestern at 5-7. I'm curious to see where you have this next team because I feel like I'm lower on this team than almost anybody. I think Nebraska goes 5-7.
Keep going.
5-7, 3-6 in the conference. I think they start 5-2 with losses to if I remember their schedule correctly, I believe I'm going to flip to it real quick. I think they lose to Oklahoma, and then I think they lose to, if I can find the other schedule right here as I'm flipping through. So they have Oklahoma, and then I think they lose to Purdue at Purdue. They have 5 games, which is Illinois, Minnesota, at Michigan versus Wisconsin, at Iowa. I think they go 0-5.
Okay, keep going.
So Nebraska 5-7. I think that they would probably fire Scott Frost after a loss to probably Minnesota. I don't think they would wait for the final 3 games. Then I have Iowa 7-5, 4-5 in the conference. I'm really just not a super fan of this team. They lose Tyler Goodson, which was their best/second best player on offense last year. They bring back Sam Laporta, but when will I ever trust Spencer Petras? When pigs fly and when a certain something freezes over. I think that they have a tougher conference schedule. They have a very tough conference schedule, actually. I think they start 4-0 with South Dakota State, Iowa State, Nevada, at Rutgers. Then they have game 5, which is versus Michigan. I think they lose that. I think they win at Illinois, have a bye, come back to lose at Ohio State, beat Northwestern, lose at Purdue, lose versus Wisconsin, lose at Minnesota, and beat Nebraska, finish 7-5 and 4-5. Then we have the top 3. I actually think it's going to be Purdue, 8-4, 5-4 in the conference. I just love that they have the best quarterback. Their non-conference schedule should be 3 easy wins, but I don't know if they can make that push for Big Ten West title. I don't know if they're really capable of that. And then we have the final 2 teams, which guess whose teams it is? It's ours. And I'm going to surprise people because I actually don't think it's Minnesota winning the division. I have Minnesota at 9-3, 6-3. I have their 3 losses as I think they lose at Penn State, even though I don't think they're that good. I'm not going to bet on Minnesota winning the whiteout. I'm just not going to do it. Then there's this rule as a Minnesota fan. You always have to predict the one game that you lose that you really shouldn't. And for some odd reason, I'm looking at this schedule. I don't think it's Purdue. I think there's enough pressure on that game because it's always a game where there's really not that much pressure. Versus Northwestern later in the year, PJ Fleck doesn't have the greatest record against Pat Fitzgerald. I think that could be a game that they are just like, whoa, what the heck just happened? And they lose that game. I think they lose to Wisconsin. Those are their 3 losses, 6-3 in the conference, which obviously means I have Wisconsin winning the division, which pains me to say, but they have an easy non-conference, and I think they win the division based off of head-to-head over Minnesota.
And I assume you have 2 losses for Wisconsin in the conference?
No, 6-3 for each of them.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So I have them. Let me refresh myself. I know that I have them losing to Ohio State. I have them losing to Michigan, and I have them. I feel 6-3. I don't know the 3rd loss, but I don't think the team is perfect. I still don't trust their passing offense. They do have a relatively younger secondary, like you talked about. I just think it's 9-3, 6-3 for both of them, and Wisconsin wins because they're going to take the X.
So in terms of our losses, I assume Ohio State, but who
Ohio
else?
State and Michigan.
We don't play Michigan this year.
Shoot. Okay, so maybe I'll go 10-2.
Okay. I'll go. I'll have this. I'll go ahead. I'll just start with mine. I was about to say, I mean, we don't play Michigan, but
yeah,
truthfully, our bottom 4 exactly the same.
Yeah,
being dead serious. Illinois last. Like I said, it's not just to how trash they are. It's just a diss that it's young and that Bielema's got a project. That's all there is to it. We'll see if Tommy DeVito, Danny DeVito's long estranged son, let's see how good he actually is. I don't know. Maybe Artur Sikorsky's got to come in there. Polish excellence, by the way. Northwestern, I just don't think the defense is going to be as good without Brandon Joseph there, with him going over to Notre Dame. Northwestern, this is the weird thing with Northwestern. They could easily finish top 2 in division, or they're going to finish second to last. They're going to finish somewhere, second last or second to the top. It's one of the 2. I got Nebraska fifth in the division. I just don't think, it was that November stretch that we were talking about for Nebraska. I do think they lose that Purdue game that we emphasize so much on. The Nebraska defense, I just don't really trust it overly that much. There is a part of Casey Thompson where like I want to defend him, but B, I'm gonna acknowledge the fact that he's not that good. He's not Aiden O'Connell. He's not CJ Stroud. He'll probably be the third quarterback in the old Big Ten rankings at the end of the season, but I really wouldn't hold my hat on that at all. Iowa, Tyler Goodson out. Spencer Petras, quarterback. No, I just don't think this is going to be a season for Iowa. They did lose some defensive talent. I just don't think that this Iowa team is going to be the stronghold that we've seen them to be in the Big Ten West for a real long time. That's just me. Minnesota, I have the third team, and I'm not saying that as a diss. I'm just saying that because I think they're going to lose that Purdue game in week 5. And like I said, that was the game that I said, the loser of that team could finish third. And I think the winner is going to be second at the end of the season. I just think that's just it. I just think, it's going to be a battle of the Wright brothers between Dylan Wright and Milton Wright. I know they're not actually brothers, but, I just got to put it out there. I could have easily put Dylan Wright as the breakout wide receiver also. I think it's going to be a really good game. I know it's going to be a really big homecoming game for Minnesota. It's just really, really tough. It really is. Winner of that game is going to go top 2 without question, in my opinion. This is Purdue. I got Purdue second. And if Wisconsin was going to West Lafayette this year instead of the other way around, and I know Wisconsin's been dominant at Ross State Stadium, we'd probably be having a different conversation. But since Purdue is going to Wisconsin, I just think this is going to be one of those games where Aiden O'Connell, he'll probably be on a high. They'll probably talk about him as among the second best quarterback in the Big Ten, but then he's probably just going to throw 3 picks. I've seen this happen quite a bit whenever quarterbacks play Wisconsin, where they just choke once they go to Camp Randall. And yeah, that obviously leaves Wisconsin number 1. And I just think Wisconsin's front 7 is going to be the best in the conference, maybe only close to Michigan. I just don't think Graham Mertz can be any worse. If I recall correctly, ever since that terrible Notre Dame game of last season, he did not have another game where he threw over a game. All of them were just 1 pick. He actually showed out in the Las Vegas Bowl against Arizona State with Skylar Bell showing out a few times. I do think that this Wisconsin team, if there's going to be any point where Wisconsin's offense is going to break out, it's just got to be now, because they showed way too much against Arizona State in that game of the Las Vegas Bowl. Graham finally showed some promise. But if Wisconsin does not win the West, I don't care if they finish second. I don't care if they finish, I don't care if all their losses, I don't care if they go 9-3 and the 3 losses were within a touchdown. If they don't win the Big Ten West, just take away Paul Chryst parking pass and give it to Jim Leonard, because you've given this guy who was borderline 5-star recruit 3 years under center, and he's not any better than what he was when he was in high school. Shows a lot, for a guy that was known to be a quarterback whisperer when he had Russell Wilson go for the highest passing efficiency of all time. This is it. I mean, if Graham doesn't take a step forward, and if Wisconsin does not win the Big Ten West for the first time since 2019, Chris just has to go, because it'll just show that this team just does not improve ever since 2020. It just did not. So on to the Big Ten title game. We both have the same opponents. Ohio State repping East, Wisconsin repping West. I think, like I said, this is just going to be a rematch of what week 4 is going to be, or week 5, whatever that game is. I think it's week 4. I think this is one of those games that's just going to be like 2019, where Wisconsin started off really hot, and I think they'll probably get ahead on Ohio State, but I think they're going to absolutely choke, and I think they're going to go 14-27, and they're going to make me want to wish I wasn't born in another state again, because that's just how this always is.
Yeah, I don't know if it's maybe me just being ultra high on Ohio State. I don't think it's that close. Like, I think we could easily see an Ohio State team that just cruises on offense the entire game. I understand Wisconsin's defense is going to be amazing, but that offense that's essentially an NFL offense already.
Yes.
So I would say Ohio State probably wins like close to 20.
Not too far off. All right, New Year's 6 teams. Who we got?
I have 3.
I got 3 also.
I think we probably have the same 3: Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Michigan.
Yes, literally.
Yeah.
Pound for pound.
Ohio State in the playoff.
Ohio State gets in playoff. Rose Bowl is not a semifinal game this season, so Wisconsin will take that. We'll probably see Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah. So
all right,
I feel like that's pretty easy.
All right, hot takes. You're first.
All right. Kind of already talked about them a lot. Maryland's going to have one of the best passing offenses in the country, and Talia is going to take a massive step in his development as a quarterback.
I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to have 4 games where he eclipses 200 yards.
Ooh. I think Scott Frost is.
Well, hang on. Do you want to know the games that I've written down for that?
What 4 games?
Okay. Notre Dame, week 1.
Yeah, I can see that.
At Michigan State, week 6.
Might hit 300.
Versus Indiana, week 11.
Might hit 500.
And versus Michigan, week 13.
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
That game just feels like revenge tour all over it. And I just feel like if there's any game where he's going to get over 200, that's got to be it.
Yeah, I could see that.
I think Utah had one of the best pass defenses last season, and one of the best passing defenses last season, and he lit them up.
Didn't they also have a running back playing corner?
True, but we're not going to talk about that.
We can ignore that part. Jason's probably, he's definitely the favorite to win the Biletnikoff. So,
yes.
All right. Kind of already said it, but not to this extent. I don't think Scott Frost is the first head coach that's fired. I actually think Tom Allen is.
No, I believe that 100%.
Because I think Scott Frost, he's going to get a little bit later into the season because he doesn't play those marquee games until November. Tom Allen, Indiana's going to see what he's doing middle of the season, and they're going to be like, man, no development. We're not getting talent out to the NFL. 2020 was obviously a fluke. Let's just move on and try and get somebody early in the coaching carousel process.
All right. So my second hot take. So obviously there's a first team All-American, second team All-American, third team All-American. So therefore that opens the room for 6 running back spots for All-American. I think 3 of those 6, so 1/2 of those All-American running back spots are going to come from the Big Ten.
I assume you believe Travion and Braylon.
Braylon, and
Blake Corum?
I think it's going to be either one of Blake Corum or whoever's going to be the leading running back for between Berger and Jarek. We'll see who Mel Tucker likes more going into the season throughout the season.
I would probably guess Jarek.
Yeah, I think Jarek. I think he is very talented. I think he got screwed towards the end of his Colorado time there. So, yeah, I think Jarek, Braylon, and Henderson. I think those 3 guys are going to be All-Americans.
Right. My third hot take. I don't know if it's a hot take or just kind of something funny I think could happen. We could see the end of the Kirk Ferentz era at Iowa. And I think as a retirement gift, he's going to make them give the head coaching job to his son.
That'd be interesting. I think it's his last season. I mean, if Iowa has as bad of a season as we're both predicting, I just don't see why you would stick around, why you would just let him stick around. This one, I don't really know, just because of how high we've been on this team throughout this entire episode. I think Ohio State, they're going to replicate LSU 2019. I think they're going to go the perfect 15-0.
Ooh. So, I can definitely see, I think they will get to the national title game. I think, obviously, this is a Big Ten breakdown. I think it's Ohio State, Alabama in the national title game. I don't really see too many other opportunities.
Ohio State is the weird one because they are like the only team that you could honestly say they lose their top 2 wide receivers, but they still have the best offense. They still have the best passing offense in the country, and probably best offense period with Travion and Mayim. And
that offensive line.
Yes, it's very good. It's dominant. I just think this Ohio State team it's just going to remind me so much of 2019 LSU, just in my opinion. I just think that they're just going to have the ability to outscore everyone.
And with that, we would also assume CJ Stroud is the number 1 overall pick in the draft, kind of replicating Joe Burrow.
You know what? We haven't spoken Heisman. He's going to win the Heisman. I mean, he's got to at this point. He was has to.
If they go 15-0, yes, he wins the Heisman. I don't like looking at the favorites to win the award because I feel like outside of last year, the favorites never win. Like it's always someone a little bit lower down.
Even then, I don't think Bryce Young was even. I don't think he was top 3 going into last season. I think he was top 5.
I thought he was the favorite last year.
I thought CJ Stroud was the favorite last season.
No, he wasn't.
No, JT Daniels was among up there actually.
I thought it was Bryce Young, like Spencer Rattler, Sam Howell.
Spencer Rattler was the favorite. That I know. He was the number 1, almost consensus favorite.
Okay, so Bryce Young probably was like top 2 or 3 because I know for a fact he was up there.
Well, it don't matter, but
Spencer Rattler, have fun at SC, not the one on the West Coast.
But anyway, so we finally reached the end of this. God damn it, that took out so much energy out of me. But did we miss out on anything?
I would say we hit almost every point of the Big Ten. Are there any interesting non-conference games that like could cause trouble? I talked about Michigan State, Washington, but like I mean, Michigan doesn't have a tough non-conference at all. They have Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn.
Does it get any more interesting than Ohio State, Notre Dame at the shoe?
Not really. I mean, is there anything even close though?
Wisconsin plays Wazoo. Does that mean anything?
Okay. I'm super high on Cam Ward and that passing offense for Washington State. I think Wisconsin wins that game. That's not a game the Badgers can overlook because I think Cam Ward, who my personal opinion is a Heisman sleeper, if Cam Ward has an amazing game, that game, they don't even have to win. If he has an amazing game and they keep it super close, that could be like oh, wow, Cam Ward is for a real show.
At the same time, let me see. I just want to verify this. I think that would be his first FBS opponent. And it would be because they play Idaho first. That is a welcome to the FBS Cam Ward show. You're not at Incarnate Word anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a tough, first FBS opponent, and it's at Camp Randall.
That's true, and but here's the upside, I guess, kind of 2:30 game, not nighttime game, so he's got that going for him. Anyways,
yeah.
All right, guys. So if you stuck it out, hope you enjoyed this Big Ten preview. I mean, follow Andrew Wilson at @AndrewsterMN_. Did I get that right?
No underscore, just AndrewsterMN.
Okay. Follow me at Latino_chill. There's going to be a lot of trash talking throughout the whole season. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see how many of these clips come back to show my face. Milton Wright probably gets injured week 1, God forbid. But guys, welcome. Thank you. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, and y'all have a good one.